It was 104:07 p.m. when my apartment stopped being my sanctuary. I remember the time because I was standing barefoot on Italian marble, holding a glass of water I never drank, listening to the sound of my own front door, unlocking from the outside. Not knocking, not buzzing, unlocking. The sound carried a very specific kind of disrespect. My brother Mark walked in first, like he owned the place. He smelled like cheap whiskey and panic. The kind that clings to a person who knows they've run out of excuses. Behind him came my parents, Elaine and Robert, moving in slow, deliberate steps, as if this were a meeting they had scheduled in their heads weeks ago. They didn't sit, they claimed space. My father leaned against the kitchen counter, his eyes already scanning the apartment, art, glass, lighting, as if everything here were part of an inventory he intended to reclaim. "We need money," he said flatly. No greeting, no concern, no warmth. 70,000, my mother added, her voice smooth, rehearsed. "Tonight." "For Mark," my father finished. "His accounts are collapsing." I laughed once, a short, humorless sound. "No." That was when my mother reached into her handbag. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead. She didn't threaten. She placed a thick stack of papers on my coffee table, like she was laying down a weapon. Emergency conservatorship filing. Filed for the morning docket. The words mental instability were bolded. "We're doing this because we love you," she said quietly. "You've been erratic. You're not thinking clearly. By tomorrow, we'll be managing your finances." Something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't desperation. This was strategy. They didn't wait for a response. My father nodded once, like a judge closing court. My brother avoided my eyes. Then they left the same way they came in, confident, unbothered, already counting money that didn't belong to them. The door shut. I locked it. Then I locked the secondary bolt. Then, the internal security latch I'd installed months earlier, when Mark started asking too many questions about my compensation package. I stood there for a moment, listening to the city hum outside the glass walls of my high-rise. Chicago didn't care. It never does. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I poured the water out, washed the glass, and set it upside down. Architects don't panic when a structure is compromised. We assess, we isolate, we reinforce. I opened my laptop, 100:58 p.m. Court opened at 90:00 a.m. I started with the credit bureaus Equifax, TransUnion, Experian, full freezes, pipe protected, immediate click, 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 next banking. They knew my old passwords. They knew my social security number. They knew my childhood dog's name and the street I grew up on. All of it became useless in under 5 minutes. 30, character randomized passwords. Security answers replaced with technical codes only I would recognize. 2-factor authentication rerouted to a device they didn't know existed. Then I moved the money. Not all of it. Just enough. I transferred most of my liquid assets into a holding account I'd opened years earlier for a hypothetical partnership, buy-in, an account no one else knew about. Confirm transfer to 119,400. Yes, the progress bar turned green. I logged into payroll and removed my direct deposit entirely. If a freeze hit tomorrow, my paycheck wouldn't land anywhere they could touch. By midnight, I was financially invisible. I looked at the conservatorship papers again. They were claiming I was impulsive, unstable, incapable. I pulled up my activity logs, timestamps, confirmations, security audits. What I saw wasn't chaos. It was precision. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a countermeasure. I opened a spreadsheet and named it Family Ledger. Row by row, I started typing. Mark's rehab loan, 14,000. Dad's tax emergency colored. Mom's temporary, credit card bailout, 9,500. Private school tuition they forgot to reimburse, a 31,000, 7 years, over 200,000. I stared at the total. Why did I keep paying? Because somewhere deep in my nervous system was an old lesson they taught me early. Love is conditional. Silence is safety. Money buys peace. They'd tied a chain around me when I was young, just heavy enough to convince me it couldn't be broken. And even when I grew strong enough to tear it out of the ground, I never tried. Until tonight, the conservatorship filing snapped something clean in my head. I wasn't their asset. I wasn't their insurance policy. And whatever game they thought they were playing, they had made one fatal mistake. They forced me to stop being their daughter. And once that role was gone, all that remained was a woman who designs systems for a living and knows exactly how to dismantle one. At 6:42 a.m., my phone began to buzz. Messages, calls, voicemails. "Your mother says you're having a mental episode. Please call us. We're worried. Mark said you threatened yourself. Are you okay?" The narrative was already spreading. I didn't respond. I listened to one voicemail from my father instead. I saved it, backed it up, twice. "You think that money is yours?" He slurred. "We invested in you. That's a return." That was the moment I understood. To them, I wasn't a person. I was a portfolio. and portfolios don't get boundaries, they get liquidated. I picked up my phone and made one call. The only family member who had ever been cut off for asking the wrong questions. Aunt Claire, I said when she answered. They filed for control. She paused, then said calmly, be in my office in an hour. Bring coffee. This gets ugly. I didn't know it yet, but within 6 hours, I would discover that my parents weren't just trying to steal my future. They had already stolen my past, and the house they were living in was never theirs to begin with. Aunt Claire's office didn't feel like a place where people worked. It felt like a place where things ended. The building sat just off the Loop, 41 floors of steel and smoked glass. No name on the lobby directory, no branding. If you didn't know it was there, you'd walk right past it believing nothing important ever happened inside. That illusion evaporated the moment the elevator doors opened. The air smelled like ozone and burned coffee, machines running hot, minds running hotter. Screens glowed everywhere. Numbers moved constantly like blood through veins. No art, no plants, no personal photos. This wasn't an office. It was a control room. Claire stood by the window with her back to me, arms crossed, watching the city like a general studying terrain. Her hair was perfectly sharp silver, her suit darker than the glass behind her. She didn't turn around. Give me the papers, she said. No hug, no sympathy. I slid the conservatorship filing across the table. She read silently, slowly, once, then again, then she laughed. It wasn't warm, it wasn't amused. It was the sound someone makes when they finally understand how deep the rot goes. Mental instability, she said. From people who can't pass a background check without sweating. She closed the file and looked at me for the first time. They're not scared for you, she said. They're scared of you. I frowned. Off what? Losing control. She pressed a button on the wall. Bring everyone in. Within 2 minutes, 4 people walked through the glass doors, each carrying laptops and coffee like weapons. No one asked who I was. They already knew. Claire turned to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. This is no longer a defense, she said. It's an extraction. She wrote 3 words in block letters, do hy namu. If this were about Mark's debt, she continued, they'd guilt you, stall you, bleed you slowly. Filing for conservatorship is a nuclear option. It invites courts, paper trails, audits. She underlined the word audits. Narcissists avoid audits the way vampires avoid sunlight. One of the analysts spoke up. We're pulling everything, property records, trust filings, old tax returns. Good, Claire said. Find me the lie they're protecting. I sat back and watched as my parents' financial lives were dragged into the light line by line. Credit scores, mortgages, lions. Credit cards shuffled like shells in a street game. At first, it looked messy, but normal messy. Bad decisions, over-leveraging, pretending retirement math would magically fix itself. Then, 4 hours in, everything stopped. One analyst printed a single page and handed it to Claire without a word. She read it, her jaw tightened not in anger, in recognition. She looked at me. Slowly. Sit down, she said. I'm already sitting. Sit down, she repeated. I did. Who owns your parents' house in Naperville? My parents. I said automatically. They bought it when I was a kid. Claire turned the paper toward me. They bought it, she said. They don't own it. I stared at the document. Property transfer history. Date circled in red. 10 years ago, the same week my grandmother died. They transferred the deed, Claire said quietly, into a trust. I shook my head. That's impossible. My father said there was no will. That everything went to medical bills. Claire's expression didn't change. Your father lied. She tapped the page. There was a will, and a trust. He never probated it. He appointed himself trustee and buried the paperwork. My ears rang. Who's the beneficiary? I asked, already knowing the answer. Claire didn't rush it. You, she said. The room tilted, the house, the remaining investments, everything not liquidated to cover debts. He was supposed to transfer control to you when you turned 25. I swallowed hard. I'm 29? Yes, she said. And many trusts trigger automatic reviews at 30. The conservatorship, the panic, the timing. It wasn't about Mark. It was about the clock. They're not trying to declare you incompetent because they believe it, Claire said. They're doing it because if you're legally incapacitated, your father stays trustee. She leaned in, indefinitely. The silence felt heavier than noise. They're living in my house, I said slowly. Yes. And if this works, they keep it, she finished, and they keep you under control. Something in me went very still. Not fear. Focus. They thought you wouldn't check. Claire continued. They raised you to doubt yourself, to feel guilty for asking questions. That was the real investment. I stood and walked to the window. All those years I thought I was paying rent on my existence, funding emergencies, smoothing over disasters, buying silence. They were the ones squatting. Claire joined me. We go to court tomorrow, she said. But not to defend your sanity. What do we do? We expose theirs. The courtroom smelled like bleach and old paper. My parents sat together, dressed in soft colors and wounded expressions. My mother clutched tissues. My father avoided eye contact. Mark looked bored, like this was an inconvenience delaying lunch. Their attorney spoke first. He painted a story of decline, sudden financial changes, paranoia, isolation. He framed my asset freezes as instability, my boundaries as delusions. I listened calmly. Claire leaned toward me and whispered, "If we hadn't found the trust, you'd be medicated by Friday." I believed her. When it was our turn, Claire stood. "We moved to dismiss," she said clearly, "on grounds of fraud and criminal concealment." The judge frowned. Claire approached the bench and laid down the documents. "The petitioners are residing in property legally owned by the respondent," she said, "without lease, without disclosure, while attempting to strip her of legal capacity." The judge read. The color drained from my parents' faces. Their lawyer froze. "This petition is dismissed with prejudice," the judge said sharply, "and this matter is referred for investigation." The gavel fell. It sounded final. That afternoon, I drove to the house, not my childhood home, my property. My father opened the door. I handed him the notice. 30 days? I said. Locks change at noon. He started to speak. I didn't listen. Some conversations expire. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Because when people lose control, they don't always retreat. Sometimes, they retaliate. And what my parents did next wasn't legal. It was personal. I thought once the truth was dragged into daylight, they'd retreat, ashamed, cornered, finally aware they'd lost. That was my mistake. People who live off control don't feel shame when they're caught. They feel rage. The first sign came 3 days later. My building concierge called while I was reviewing project schematics. "Mems Hale," he said carefully, "there's a welfare check request on file from the city." I closed my eyes. "They say they're concerned about your mental health," he continued. "Do you want me to send them up?" "No," I said calmly. "I'll come down." 2 officers stood in the lobby, polite but alert. One held a clipboard. The other watched my hands. "We received a report that you may be a danger to yourself," the first officer said. I nodded once. "Filed by my parents?" He hesitated. "Yes, of course it was. They'd lost in court, so they were escalating outside it." I handed them documentation, court dismissal, attorney contact, medical clearance. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. Competence doesn't argue. They apologized and left. That night, my email inbox exploded. My parents had emailed my employer, then my board, then the licensing body. Claims of instability, claims of recklessness, claims that I was unfit to oversee public safety, critical projects. They weren't trying to get my money anymore. They were trying to erase me. Claire called within minutes of the first forwarded message. "They're an extinction behavior," she said. "This is when narcissists become most dangerous. What do? We document," she said. "And we counterpunch." Within hours, cease and desist letters went out. HR flagged the emails as harassment. My licensing board opened a review, not of me, but of the complaints themselves. False reporting carries consequences. My parents didn't stop. They posted. Social media became their new courtroom. Prayer requests, vague warnings, carefully worded concern. "So worried about our daughter's mental health. Sometimes success breaks people. We're praying she accepts help." The comments poured in. Sympathy for them, doubt about me. It shouldn't have hurt. But it did. Because reputation is a structure too, and they were trying to collapse mine from the inside. Claire had one rule during this phase: do not respond publicly. "They're baiting you," she said. "Silence deprives them of oxygen." Instead, we prepared. We filed restraining orders. We submitted harassment evidence. We compiled timelines. And quietly, Claire triggered the trust's forensic review. That was when the real damage surfaced. Unreported withdrawals, improper asset sales, tax irregularities buried under creative accounting. My father hadn't just hidden the trust. He'd been draining it. Claire called me into her office late one night. "They didn't just squat," she said. "They stripped copper from the walls." "What does that mean?" "It means criminal exposure," she said. "Serious exposure." The state investigator contacted us 2 days later. Then the IRS, then the county. My parents' silence was sudden and absolute. No posts, no emails, no calls. That scared me more than the noise. Because predators don't go quiet unless they're planning something else. And they were. It happened the morning the movers arrived. I was at the Naperville house with a locksmith and a sheriff's deputy. The 30-day notice had expired. The locks were being changed. That's when Mark showed up. Not yelling, not drunk, calm, too calm. He walked up the driveway with his hands in his pockets like he belonged there. You're really doing this? He asked. Lass. He laughed softly. You think you won? I didn't answer. You don't get it, he said. You destroyed them, they destroyed themselves? No, he said, stepping closer. You destroyed our family. The words were supposed to land like a curse. They didn't. This was never a family, I said. It was a dependency network. His face hardened. You think Claire's protecting you? He sneered. She's using you? I smiled faintly. That's the difference, I said. I consented. The deputy stepped between us. Mark left without another word. That afternoon Claire called. They filed for bankruptcy, she said. Who? Your parents. It was strategic. Bankruptcy stays investigations, delays asset recovery, buys time. They're trying to freeze the trust proceedings, she said. But it won't work. Fraud pierces bankruptcy protection. I sat at my desk that night, staring at the city lights. For the first time since this started, exhaustion hit. Not fear, grief, not for them. For the version of myself that believed love required endurance. That thought didn't last long, because the next email changed everything. It was from the trust's original attorney. Retired. Forgotten, still meticulous. He'd seen the audit notice, and he remembered something Claire hadn't found, a safety clause. If a trustee is found to have acted in bad faith. The email read, the beneficiary may pursue damages for lost appreciation. Claire nearly laughed when she read it. They didn't just lose the house, she said. They lost the upside. We ran the numbers. The value of what the trust should have been worth. Adjusted for growth. Adjusted for misuse. Adjusted for time. The total made my stomach flip. 7 figures. This wasn't just justice, it was consequence. Claire looked at me carefully. This ends one of 2 ways, she said. Settlement or trial. What do you recommend? She smiled thinly. Let them choose. I thought the final battle would be about money. I was wrong. Because when the settlement offer arrived, it wasn't an apology, it was a confession, and the last page changed how I saw my parents forever. The settlement envelope arrived without ceremony, no apology letter, no explanation, no attempt at reconciliation, just thick paper, expensive ink, and the quiet arrogance of people who still believed they were negotiating from power. Claire didn't open it right away. She placed it on the table between us like a contaminated object. Read it slowly. She said, they're going to tell on themselves. She was right. The offer was framed as resolution, a clean exit, no trial, no admission of wrongdoing. They would vacate the house immediately, relinquish all trust claims, pay a fraction of the calculated damages, in exchange. A non-disparagement clause. Not just silence, control. They wanted me legally barred from ever telling the truth. I reached the final page and felt something unexpected. Relief. Not because it was over, because the illusion finally was. This isn't remorse. I said. No. Claire replied. It's preservation. They still think they're protecting something? Yes, she said. Their image. That's the last asset they believe they own. I closed the folder. I'm not signing this. Claire studied my face carefully. Are you sure? She asked. Trial will be brutal. Public. They'll be exposed completely, but so will everything. I know, and they'll lose, she said. But it won't be painless. I nodded. They taught me endurance, I said. They don't get to weaponize it anymore. The trial lasted 4 days. 4 days of documents. 4 days of numbers. 4 days of watching my parents shrink under oath as facts replaced narrative. Emails surfaced. Transfer records. Internal notes. Plans. One document hit harder than all the rest. An email my father sent to an accountant years earlier. She's responsible and predictable. We just need to keep her dependent long enough. The courtroom was silent, not shocked. Just done. When the ruling came, it was surgical. Removal of trustee status, restitution for losses, damages for fraud, referral for criminal investigation. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. This court will not reward manipulation disguised as parenting, he said. My parents didn't look at me. Mark left before it ended. The house was sold within the month. I didn't keep it. I didn't want a monument. I wanted closure. The proceeds went into accounts with my name, and only my name on them. No emergency keys. No shared access. No invisible chains. A week later, I sat alone in my apartment and opened the old spreadsheet. Family ledger, 214,000. Years of payments, appeasement, silence. I highlighted the total. For a moment, my finger hovered. Then I deleted the entire file. Not forgiveness. Accounting. Bad debt written off. You don't carry losses forever just because they were familiar. The silence afterward felt different. Not empty. Clean. I changed my number. I blocked the last remaining contact points. I didn't announce it. I didn't explain. Closure doesn't require witnesses. Months passed. My career stabilized. My sleep returned. The hyper-vigilance faded into something quieter, awareness without fear. One evening, I caught my reflection in the glass. I looked taller, not physically, internally, like someone who finally stands on their own foundation. People ask if I miss them. I don't. I miss the idea of parents. But ideas don't deserve loyalty when they were never real. What I gained was heavier than money. Autonomy. When you stop paying for permission to exist, life gets cheaper and richer. I still design structures for a living. But the most important one I ever built was a life where access is earned, not inherited, not demanded, chosen. If you've ever felt trapped by people who called it love, remember this. You are not an asset. You are not a return on investment. You are not a debt they get to collect. You are the architect now. And you can redesign everything.